just watched Wladamir Klitschko versus Bryant Jennings. It was actually a more competitive fight than I thought it was going to be. For those who watched my pre-fight prediction, you'll have seen that I confidently went for Wladamir by KO. And I thought Bryant Jennings pushed him a bit in this fight. In my opinion, it is very, very hard to score this fight for Bryant Jennings. I do agree that Wladamir Klitschko was a deserved winner on the cards. However, I feel that the fight was scored a bit too wide for my liking, especially as we must note that a point was deducted from Wladamir Klitschko in the 10th round for excessive holding, which was the theme throughout this fight, as is becoming the usual with Wladamir Klitschko fights. The first round was very tight. I wouldn't have any complaints how he scored that, but I possibly just sided with Wladamir because he landed a good right hand towards the end of the round. I gave Jennings the third round and the 6th round, I think. But again, for the third round, I think that could have gone either way. Towards the end of the fight, when Bryant Jennings came on pretty strong, I was very impressed with his conditioning. I remember watching him just before the last round, and he was talking to Klitschko, talking to his trainers. He wasn't out of breath. He was still showing good hand speed. When he was throwing combinations, he was flurrying quickly, and he was a guy in tremendous condition. I thought really the theme of this fight was that Bryant Jennings' lateral movement put Wladamir Klitschko off. Klitschko, for me, is a fighter who operates best when he sets his feet, and that's when you see him throwing that devastating 1-2. That's when you see him leading with that strong left hook. Here, what he was doing was he was jabbing, but it wasn't the same kind of rocket launcher jab you usually associate with Wladamir Klitschko. It was more of a sort of tapping, pushing, annoying jab rather than a jab that's going to take someone's head off. And I think that was testament to Bryant Jennings' awkwardness and Bryant Jennings' side-to-side movement. I think Wladamir had to kind of move and throw the jab rather than really setting his feet and throwing it. And I think the post-fight interview with Max Kellerman was quite telling. Klitschko said Jennings didn't give him the chance to throw the right hand as often as he wanted. I think that's certainly true. Guys like Povetkin, guys like Pulev, arguably they're better fighters than Bryant Jennings, but in many ways they were more stationary, less athletic, more flat-footed, and Wladamir was able to kind of tee off from range. I thought here Bryant Jennings did a good job of moving side to side, but also forwards and backwards. He wasn't letting Wladamir control the range so much. He wasn't letting Wladamir stand in that distance that he enjoys so much, where he can just tee off with the 1-2. So I thought Jennings' best achievement in this fight was his conditioning, his movement, and also his chin. He showed a really, really strong jaw, and at no point in the fight did he look like getting dropped, which I think is partly due to his chin, partly due to the fact that he wasn't allowing Wladamir to set his feet and really launch off with power punches due to the Jennings movement. The other thing that I think must be credited to Jennings was he kept a very high, tight guard. There were times that, Klitschko got through, Klitschko was able to get in between his two hands. And I wouldn't say it was like a defensive masterpiece from Jennings whatsoever, because there were frailties and gaps there that Klitschko could and did exploit. But throughout the course of the fight, Jennings' hands were very high, Jennings' hands were very, very tight, and he was able to, avoid the majority of the Klitschko jabs, which led to, slightly lower accuracy figures from Klitschko than perhaps one would expect. Jennings is, I've talked about his foot movement, his head movement, his body movement, the angles, they were also there, and it was very impressive for someone who has no amateur pedigree and is slightly new to the sport. So I thought it was a very good defensive performance. He had lots of different attributes which made him an awkward guy to fight. As I say, the high guard, the lateral movement, the head movement, the body angles he was operating, and the way he controlled the distance. Really, really impressive, combined with a very strong chin. I thought offensively, Jennings was less capable in this fight. And I said this, in the pre-fight video, I said I don't think he's got the jab to out-jab Wladamir. I don't think he's got the inside game to break Wladamir down on the inside. And I don't think he's got the power to knock Wladamir out. I think Jennings showed some inside capability. He was working the body quite nicely, throwing combinations to the body. Once or twice he landed a very nice uppercut. And he was able to mix it up on the inside. His inside game was effective at times, but it wasn't destructive enough. And there was a lack of a devastating jab, a lack of a devastating one-punch knockout power from Jennings. And just offensively, for me, he looked like a lesser fighter. Wladamir was able to kind of step out of range at times. Wladamir was able to suck up the punishment Jennings was offering, really. At no stage did Wladamir look hurt or looked worried by Jennings' offence at all. I think the other thing from Wladamir is, even though he wasn't as athletic or smooth a mover as Jennings, Wladamir's such a big guy, and I was quite impressed how he moved around the ring, how his stamina held up for 12 rounds. He threw a lot more lever than Jennings, and often when Jennings was lunging forward, he came charging in a lot, throwing a big left hook, an overhand right, power shots to the body. Klitschko, even though he's not light on his feet and graceful like a dancer, he was able to jump back, he was able to kind of glide around the ring, get out of the way a bit. So I thought that was good from Klitschko. The jab was, thrown with high enough output, high enough accuracy to still be effective and still get the fight won. But Klitschko didn't look absolutely devastating in this fight. He really didn't. And I think the reason for that is Klitschko is a guy who looks at his most effective when he's got time and when he's got distance. A guy like Kubrat Pulev, he stood in front of Klitschko and he didn't rush him at all. That allowed Klitschko to really, really play to his strengths. A guy like Bryant Jennings, who's awkward, moving side to side, forwards and backward, different angles, head movement, foot movement, body movement, it doesn't allow Klitschko to stand there from range and just pump the jab and work off the jab like he likes to. So I thought that was the reason that Klitschko didn't look as good. The awkwardness and the movement of Bryant Jennings. And I also think that, the fact that Jennings kind of rushed into Klitschko, he didn't just stand in front of him like Pulev did. He didn't just allow himself to get held like Povetkin did. He kind of rushed in, came in low, ducked under the jab, and then started working the body. I think it put Klitschko off his A game to an extent, and I think that's why Klitschko looked, looked slightly less devastating than when he used to. I don't necessarily think it's due to Klitschko getting old or having too many miles on the clock. I think it's more to do with the awkwardness and difficulties that Bryant Jennings was able to pose. I must say, and the commentator, I think Roy Jones Jr. made this point in commentary, but when Klitschko got the point docked and when it became clear he was no longer allowed to hold, he looked a lot more vulnerable. And I think Klitschko is so reliant on that jab from distance, working off the jab, and then holding on the inside. And this fight did make me think that a guy like Tyson Fury could have real effect against Klitschko. Because if Fury can try and stay out of range of the Klitschko jab and use his own jab, and then, if there's increasing pressure on Klitschko not to hold and the referees are becoming increasingly aware of this, I think there is scope, for a guy like Tyson Fury really to cause him trouble, because I think the referees are stopping him from behaving just how he wants on the inside. And I feel that if the jab gets taken away from him due to Fury's range, it will really, really make it an interesting fight. Fury will have as good a chin as Bryant Jennings, because Klitschko will land eventually, and we'll see whether or not his jaw holds up. But I think that's a fascinating fight, and that's the fight we expect next for Klitschko, with Fury being a WBO #1 contender. As for Bryant Jennings, do I want to see a rematch? Not really. I thought he was competitive, but I thought Klitschko was a deserved winner, and I just don't think Bryant Jennings has the offence to really, really upset Klitschko. I just don't feel he does. As I said, I think the judges' scorecards were harsh, especially the 118-109 scorecard, which effectively was 11 rounds to 1. I scored it, as I say, more like 8-4, 9-3. And then you've got to factor in the point deduction. So on my 8-4 scorecard, maybe you could call it 7-4, which is close. And I think Jennings, can be a threat in the heavyweight division, can be a top 10 guy, maybe even a top 5 guy. It'd be interesting to see who he fights next and where he goes from here. Maybe he could fight a guy like Povetkin, Pulev, Wilder, Tony Thompson, Bermain Stavern, one of those names that would be interesting for him. One person I'll mention briefly is Mike Perez. If you look at the trouble that Mike Perez caused Bryant Jennings, perhaps we should re-look at that fight in a new light now. Perez is fighting Povetkin. Credit to Mike Perez for that performance in hindsight, because Jennings said he was really capable in this fight. Anyway, I've rambled on for a bit here. Good fight, entertaining fight. Credit to Bryant Jennings, but Klitschko, a deserved winner, who was just not totally at his best due to the awkwardness of Bryant Jennings' movement. Let me know your thoughts, let me know your scorecards. Thanks very much for watching.